Part 2 for shipping items abroad. Welcome back. So, in our previous video, we kind of covered what it took for us to get items shipped.
Right, leaving our origin.
Right. And now we're going to talk about once items actually got to Peru, our destination country. So, obviously, we shipped via boat, so everything came into port. We're in Peru, so the port is in Callao, which is right by Lima. Clint did most of this process with patience in
a lot of patience.
Yeah. So I'll kind of let him talk about this step. I helped a little towards the end, but everything was in Clint's name. He did most of it.
So just a couple recommendations up front. When you are shipping to a country, make sure that in that country you get a customs agent, someone who you can trust. You can do a little bit of shopping around to see comparative prices. We had a recommendation from a good friend here in Peru, and they worked great.
Yeah.
But make sure you have a good idea of who your customs agent is before the arrival of your goods.
Right, and some shipping companies do provide that.
Yep.
I think ours would have, but we opted to go with someone else because we had a recommendation and the price varied significantly for us. So check with your shipping company, and then if that's not a satisfactory price, shop around.
Yep. If you're moving to a developing place or a place that is not in North America or Europe or East Asia, expect delays. Just as a blanket statement.
I mean, probably expect delays.
Probably anywhere. True enough.
Yeah.
But have your expectations at that point, because if it can get frustrating if you're expecting things to move very efficiently. A lot of times there's a lot of work going on at the port. There's a ton of things going in and out of these places, and you're not the top priority.
Right.
And so expect delays. Also anticipate that it's going to cost a little more than you budget for. There's always going to be something you didn't expect. So just expect you're going to pay maybe, I don't know how much you could say, 10 or 15% more. We certainly probably paid a little extra along those lines, 10 or 15% more than we had budgeted. So just expect that as well.
Right.
So with the overall process, it was very difficult for me. My Spanish is okay, but not when it comes to importing and exporting. My vocabulary was totally not equipped for all of that, and so I was very much reliant on the customs agent. And they were great, and they were very patient with me.
Yeah, it's conversational Spanish is a whole lot different than learning specialized vocab.
Right.
So
be prepared for that.
Yeah, our agents were really nice. They babysat Clint a lot.
They really did.
So they were fantastic.
They were really patient with me. So I would highly recommend them as well for Peru. But you're gonna have if you're part of the process yourself, as we opted to do, there's a lot of running around for documents, making payments, and basically just showing your face so that you can receive the goods. And so when it comes to expenses, you're going to be paying port fees to actually use the equipment to unload and offload the boats. Basically the rent to return the container in good working order.
Right.
There's the duties and taxes. In Peru, for example, the average for household goods is around 22% of the declared value of the items that you're importing. So be prepared for the taxes, and know from country to country, I'm sure it's different.
Right.
Know what that rate's going to be, because usually that's the biggest amount that you're going to pay once your goods arrive. There's also the transport fee to move the container around. For example, we had to move our container from the port to a kind of a loading area where we could take things off the container and put it onto the truck that we were taking to our final destination. So you had to pay that fee. Copies of every document. Tons of copies of my personal document, my passport, that kind of thing. Copies of the documents that you're retrieving from the port. Copies of your bill of lading. Copies.
Right.
If you have a good agent, they're going to tell you what copies you need for what and who you need to give them to, what copies need to be certified by a notary, all of these kinds of things. So it's a lot of kind of going back and forth, running between offices, paying the fees as they come along, so that you can get
And
your stuff freed out of the port.
keep your receipts when you make payments.
Absolutely. Keep your receipts, 100%.
Yep. So after our stuff was liberated from the port, which took Clint about 2 weeks' time.
It was about a week and a half.
Yeah.
It was about 7 business days.
Right. We obviously aren't living in Lima, so we had to find a trucking company to ship our stuff to Arequipa. Again, the same friend that made the recommendation for the customs agent recommended a trucking company.
Yep.
And they were great.
They were fantastic.
Right.
Again, very patient with us.
Yes. So when we loaded the truck, we'll insert videos now of loading the truck in the staging area, I guess. Right. We loaded it basically opposite as we did for the shipping container. Yep. So we loaded any fragile and valuable goods to the back of the truck.
Or to the front,
yeah,
closest to the
closer
front
to
of the truck.
cab.
Right.
Just so they'd be less accessible, but also rumbling around on the roads, they wouldn't be shaken as much.
Right.
We had help from the trucking company. Mm-hmm. They had people that they paid to help us load, because if it would have just been the two of us,
been difficult.
Right. It probably took us about an hour and 15 minutes to load the truck. It really wasn't bad at all.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad at all.
They were very helpful.
Yep. The overall distance that we were shipping our things from the port to our home here in Arequipa is about the distance from Madison, Wisconsin to Nashville, Tennessee. Right. Just to give you an idea of kind of the distance that we were moving our things.
Yeah, it took about 24 hours for the truck to get through. There was a bit of a delay. Our truck got in the evening time, so they decided to park the truck in a garage overnight, and then came in the morning so that we could get everything into our apartment.
Yep.
So just a little background on our apartment. Maybe you watched our house vlog to see what our apartment's like, but Arequipa is in higher elevation, so that presented its own difficulties for actual labor of bringing things into our apartment.
Right. Be physically fit.
Right. So we're at about 2,300 meters in Arequipa, and that's about 7,600 feet for elevation. We also have a second floor apartment, which you will have seen if you watched our apartment tour. And the stairs to get up to our apartment
are a little bit limiting.
Yeah, it's a square, I guess,
right.
And it's really skiddy. So we'll insert footage right now of some hilarity trying to get our couch and things up to the second level.
It was quite an adventure.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Since we have our things here, and it's very reassuring to have them.
It is.
We've kind of reflected on this process, and there are things that we would do differently.
Absolutely.
If we knew then what we do now. Right. So one of the things would be protecting furniture.
Right.
So
yeah, a good portion of our furniture, some of it we wrapped quite well.
With
others
shipping blankets.
Right. Others we thought, well, it's light. It'll be fine. It's not fine. A lot of even the lighter objects had large scuffs. I mean, we're talking about objects that are sitting in a container and rattling and rumbling and vibrating for weeks and weeks at a time. Yeah. So, if you see something that's valuable and you want to protect the face of it, definitely put a shipping blanket, wrap it in plastic, something to protect it. We protected a few items quite well, and those fared really well. Right. The rest that we didn't protect very well did not fare well. If you have valuable furniture in any respect, please cover it with shipping blankets. Yeah. I can't emphasize that more.
The things that didn't fare well were small tables, bedside tables, side tables.
Right.
Surprisingly enough, our dining room chairs, which we're sitting in right now, fared
pretty well.
But it was mostly small tables that we just didn't bother packaging well. So. Yep.
I mean, it's nothing that a little sanding and maybe some refinishing with paint or sealer won't fix, but
it's nothing actually broke beyond repair. Right. That being said, we haven't actually looked into our totes of stuff. We're electing to keep most things packed up. We did some superficial looking in dishes and stuff, and they looked okay.
Yeah.
So
I think we did a pretty good job with our packing of boxes.
Yeah, that kind of leads me to the next thing of packing fragile items.
Right.
We used a lot of bubble wrap.
Right.
We had some from previous moves. We also have a friend that works in a big distribution center that they would just throw it away, so they gave it to him for free, which was amazing.
Thank you again.
Because that costs a lot to
Yeah.
buy. So if you have a hookup like that, try to utilize it because it's
worth it.
It's so helpful, and
worth
it appears that most things that we wrapped well, dishes, pictures, things like that, fared pretty decently. So I would maybe be cognizant of that.
Yep. And your shipping company is going to offer a service to kind of get through all of the port and customs bureaucracy. It might be worth it to pay them to do that. For us, it was somewhat stressful. It took a lot of our time.
Right.
That's their job. That's their business. They're happy to take the time doing it. For us, again, it was a week and a half roughly of me running around between the port.
And I'm sure they thought that we were silly because they could have probably done it much more efficiently without us tagging.
Very likely. So it might be worth it if you're on the anxiety spectrum. Just let the guys who know how to do it, and it might be worth it just to pay a little extra to have that done.
Right. The next thing I would say is think about why or why not you're wanting to ship your belongings. For our reasons, I would still ship our belongings because we love reading, we love to have books around, and it would have cost us the same to ship books with everything or just books. So for us, that makes sense, but it was a lot of money, and it was a lot of time, and it was a lot of anxiety. So really, really think hard about whether or not you want to ship your belongings.
And in that regard, we are definitely a minority. Most people, when they move abroad, they sell everything and start anew. Unless you're moving to a place that has a lot of economic barriers, we'll say, you can find what you need there. We had our library is something that couldn't necessarily easily be replaced. In fact, it definitely can't easily be replaced. So we couldn't have found that here. But everything else we could have found here quite easily.
Right. The other thing I would do differently is numbering our inventory. We had said in the previous video that every single item needed to be numbered, regardless of what it was. It had to have a number so it could be on the inventory so that the customs agents could make sure that everything was accounted for and we weren't smuggling goods in.
Right.
However, we didn't know that it had to be numerically in line with no gaps.
Right.
So we probably touched our spreadsheet, probably 5 times to try to edit things and fill gaps. Right. And it took way longer than it should have.
So think ahead of time about how you're numbering things to make sense out of a table goes with a chair versus and having those numbers in order rather than having items between them or bed parts, that kind of thing.
Yeah, just don't have gaps.
Right.
Make sure everything is straight in order, because I can honestly say I literally spent hours that I shouldn't have working on that inventory. So just do it in order.
Right.
Really. Also, for me personally, I would have brought less items. And some of the items I'm very happy to have, and of course I'm happy to have all of our stuff, but I specifically would have brought less clothing. In the previous video, we had said, as we were packing, we did get rid of a fair number of items. We took clothes and shoes and all kinds of stuff to the local thrift store, but I would have done more of that because with our situation, both Clint and I were living out of a backpack for 5 months.
Right.
5 months now. I was pretty strategic in what I put in my backpack to wear. I had exercise clothes, dresses, casual clothes, professional clothes. I had a variety, so I can honestly say I almost didn't miss a lot of my clothes because I had everything I needed. So, we have most things in abundance in the United States, and I think we have more things than we realize we do.
Or that we need.
Right. So I would be cognizant of that because you really can get by with a lot less than what you think, as long as you're cognizant in what you're taking.
Right. Be smart.
Right.
Be smart with it. The last one is kind of a funny one. If you're bringing appliances of any kind, like for example, we brought a toaster and a microwave and computers, check to make sure that the voltage is compatible with your destination country. For us, it's not so bad. There's a couple items we just didn't even think about.
Right.
But check them, because there are some things that we can't use that we brought. For example, our microwave.
Yep.
So just simple things like that. It sounds goofy, and of course you would do that. But sometimes with all of the things that are going on with moving, it's something simple that you just forget. So make sure you check that your electronics and appliances are actually compatible with your destination country.
Right. And because I am not electricity minded, it's not my profession. So I didn't realize
it's
that,
my profession, so I even had less of an excuse.
But I didn't realize that voltage and wattage was different.
Mm-hmm.
So just check.
So for example, the United States runs on 110, 120 volts. Peru is 220. Right. So a lot of things will not work. But in a lot of countries that might not be an issue at all.
Right. Right. I think that's it.
Yeah.
So that was our experience shipping household goods abroad.
Yep.
Like I said, we probably bumbled through it, and I'm sure someone has done it in a much more streamlined process.
Absolutely.
But I hope that if someone is watching this, it will help them in the process, because we didn't know anyone who had done this before, so it was really trial and error on our part.
It was very new for us.
Yep.
Yep.
So we'll wrap it up, because I'm sure this is a long video already. So we'll catch you later, I guess.
See you next time.